beat a zip. Hi everyone, Zipthany Code Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd. And it's time for a review of the new J-Rock project, 90059. J-Rock is a California rapper known very well for his affiliation with the hip-hop crew clique Black Hippie. He is also a signee to DAWG Entertainment as well, meaning he is label mates with SZA and Kendrick Lamar, Schoolboy Q, Ab-Soul. And my first exposure to J-Rock was the same as many other people back in 2011. When TDE was first blowing up, a lot of the respective members of TDE were first blowing up, and J-Rock dropped his commercial full-length debut, Follow Me Home. And while lyrically and flow-wise and instrumentally, this record definitely had the basics down. In a lot of respects, this just kind of felt like a bit of a standard gangster rap record for me. But there was also a point in TDE history where every other member of TDE and Black Hippie were a little underdeveloped as well, but eventually each member came out with their own breakout record, which was fantastic, and followed up that album too. But on the studio album front, J-Rock has been a little silent for the past 4 years, but last year he started dropping singles like Parental Advisory, a really hard-nosed gangster rap track banger that I am kind of disappointed didn't make it onto the standard edition of this record. The singles to me were saying that J-Rock was staying true to his story, true to himself, but just getting a little more artful and musical and out there, which is kind of the same direction each member of TDE took, but sort of in their own way. I pre-ordered this thing because I was so excited for this record, because I figured this album, with every TDE record as of late being of such a high level of quality for the most part, how could I go wrong? I figured this thing's like a layup. Also, the idea of making this record come out sooner by pre-ordering it was pretty enticing too, although I'm not really sure if this album would have come out on this date regardless. Either way, going into this record, I think I was maybe too ready to just expect it to be great, because I feel like the album that I ended up getting isn't amazing. It's not bad. It's decent. In some ways, J-Rock to me is like the grittiest and most hard-nosed and just most tough as nails member of TDE, but he came through with like the softest album. Now, there are highlights on this record. I love the song Necessary. The 90059 refrain at the very beginning of that track, catchy as hell, and when the beat eventually drops in, it's a banger, it's off kilter, it's quirky, it's colorful. J-Rock sounds mean as hell. His lyrics are just, he's such a cold-blooded bastard. It sounds modern, it sounds new in a lot of ways. It kind of feels like the same direction Schoolboy Q took Oxymoron in, but J-Rock has his, own personal vibe. He very clearly sounds influenced by 50 Cent, by Tupac. It's an amazing start to the record. It's like just dropping a bomb right at the start of the album. And then we get the song Easy Bake with SZA and Kendrick, and both of them are fantastic on this track, and there's a really great beat switch in the middle of the song too that adds a lot of character. It seems there are a lot of beat switches going on in 2015. I mean, this is another one that goes down well. And J-Rock sounds fantastic over these two very different bits of instrumental on both sides of this album. The instrumentals, J-Rock himself continuing to bring a lot of character, and not only are his verses solid, but he's switching up what he's doing vocally too. I mean, in these first two tracks, we're already getting a lot of dynamics. We're getting that kind of grimy gravel voice J-Rock, this weird voice J-Rock where he's kind of, just all over his vocal range, and but he still comes through with just a really mean attitude that still makes his lyrics captivating. But then I feel like the record just drops off so quickly. We get the song Gumbo, where I feel like the very lax singing on the hook here is really drab, just not interesting at all. And the very smooth, easygoing instrumental, I mean, it's not bad, but I kind of feel like in the first third of the record, we've just kind of doused a whole bucket of water onto the amazing flames that we've built up with the first two songs. J-Rock's verses really aren't that bad. They're some of my favorite verses on the entire record. I love the line on here where he raps about being the eye of the tiger in the eye of the storm, and there's some other great bars in this track too. And I like how The concept of the song sort of references, I guess, the randomness or the word association that happens in a lot of hip-hop music, how a lot of rap bars do kind of feel like when you collect all the things that are referenced or mentioned, like gumbo, and the hook can kind of be like adding flavor to that. I mean, an interesting concept, but again, instrumentally and hook-wise, a bit of a weak moment. This song actually introduces a pretty long lull in the middle of the record. The song The Ways introduces kind of another light trap beat. J-Rock comes through with a really nutty delivery at the first verse of the song, and then we get a bunch of filler verses later in the track and a really throw-away chorus. I feel like at the beginning of the track, we're just getting such a hodgepodge. J-Rock doesn't even really match the energy of the instrumental. I feel like he's trying to make up for the fact that this record has so many light beats by just going a little insane on a lot of the verses here. And the song Telegram, I feel like it's not a bad track by itself, but it's another song that gets lost in the mush of very unentertaining, slower tracks in the track listing here. I appreciate that J-Rock tried to come through with a theme here, but the sort of story of love on the rocks and sort of having a hard time of keeping a relationship together while being a famous rapper, I don't know, it just sounds a little tedious. Now, in a sense, this record does come back with the title track with a banger beat. J-Rock's verses on here sound pretty great, although maybe with more listens, the hook does sound maybe a little bit of a put-on, with J-Rock pulling so much influence from Old Dirty Bastard on this chorus. It's okay. And the song Vice City, featuring Kendrick Lamar, Schoolboy Q, and Ab Soul, I really like this track, but I just kind of feel like it's just another moment in context of this record that doesn't really add any momentum to this thing. Again, by itself, I think it's a decent song. It's a weird track. The flow is totally strange. Kendrick Lamar, instead of just coming through and really starting the track hard, there's a false start right at the beginning of the song. Kendrick's verse, to me, is easily maybe the least interesting of the entire record. Ab Soul is my favorite on the entire record. J-Rock and Schoolboy Q hold their own as well. The structure is a little bit of a hodgepodge, but I like the fact that we do have 4 MCs here and a pretty interesting, slow, rubbery beat with some awesome bass that features artists that are at such a high level of talent they could do something so weird on this track with the flow, with the beat, with their lyrics, and it still comes through as a pretty coherent song. But to me, this track should have been another Control verse. You know, this track should have lit shit on fire. I mean, it's definitely intriguing, it's interesting, it's trying something different, and for the most part it succeeds, but I just feel like it adds to the ongoing lull of this album. And this record isn't even that long. The last 3 tracks in the track listing here are snoozers as well, as I'm just dying of thirst for something exciting to happen on this album. J-Rock's storytelling at the start of Fly on the Wall isn't really that bad. It's pretty good. Again, I can't really fault a lot of J-Rock's verses on this record. I just wish the instrumentals were more interesting and vibrant and in your face. This track, this verse, could have easily done just as well over a harder, just more interesting instrumental. And then Busta Rhymes, I mean, while his flow is nice, he's all over the place. I mean, Busta is doing stuff now that he was not doing in the 90s in terms of technical skill and all that. But I feel like he just kind of spends his entire verse just complimenting J-Rock and just talking about how amazing he is, which, I mean, it's nice to get such a cosign from a vet like that, but still, I feel like if you're going to bring a dude like Busta onto a track, it's got to be on something a little harder, a little more exciting. Money Trees Deuce, a track that I like by itself, but another cut that gets lost in the mush of this record. And the message is it just feels like such a non-essential moment. For a track like this to essentially end the album off on a soft note is like completely futile, because nearly every track on this album is a soft note in some kind of way. So to try to do something just kind of easygoing and tender at the end of the album just seems like, what's the point at this point? You're not going to get any more introspective here than you did on the rest of the record. And that's another thing. While I appreciate that J-Rock tried to do something just a little bit more tender and a little bit more thoughtful on this record, it's not like he's slowed things down so that we can hear him sort of dive down to these subterranean, emotional, and lyrical depths, because I don't really feel like he's sort of approaching the subject matters that he does on this record with any more tact than a lot of other rappers have, which is an arena that for J-Rock I'm sure is difficult to not only step in but also keep away from. Keep away from because your label mate Kendrick just released one of the most significant records of all time when it comes to dealing with these sort of issues. But simultaneously, your cohorts are kind of dealing in these issues in a lot of different ways in their music. I imagine the temptation to reflect it in your music is there as well. I think TDE has created this new wave of interest in conscious hip-hop. J-Rock tried to, I guess, answer that call, answer that demand a little bit on this record, and it just resulted in a very soft, unexciting album. Though I do like a lot of the songs on here individually, and overall the record itself wasn't that bad. It was decent. I'm feeling a strong 6 to a light 7 on this thing. Transition. Have you given this record a listen? I hope you have. And if you have, what did you think of it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? What do you think I should take a listen to next and then review in a video? And that's it. Anthony Fantano, J-Rock, 90059, forever.